I feel like I'm on the SS Enterprise here, and which is great to look at. But we're going to get started. If you are looking for a great conversation with dedicated, smart educators in a time where education is the key to success and addressing various divides, literacy, CS, others, you've got great folks here. If you're here to listen to that conversation around rural and low SES students, you're at the right place. I am going to hand it over to the esteemed philosopher, Dr. Brian Williams, and I will let you take it from here, Brian. I'm going to leave the stage.
Thank you, Co. Welcome, everybody. We're excited that you're here with us today to engage in what we think is a very valuable conversation about two critical spaces in our world right now, urban communities and rural communities. And it's interesting that these communities are often talked about in separate ways, but in so many ways they intersect, particularly when it comes to things like computer science and access to computer science. So we're excited that you're here. We're hoping that you will engage with us in this conversation and start dropping comments and questions in the chat. We'll make sure that we'll get to as many of them as possible. Like Co said, I'm Brian Williams. I'm moderating this panel, this amazing panel this afternoon. I'm a professor over at Georgia State University in the Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education. I also serve as the director of the Alonzo A. Krim Center for Urban Educational Excellence, which is the Center for Urban Ed at Georgia State. It's my pleasure today to serve as your moderator, and I'm going to introduce our panelists. And I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order because you can't put these women in hierarchical order. They're all absolutely amazing. So I'm going to start with Dr. Gwendolyn Benson. She is the former Associate Dean for Faculty Development and Partnerships in the College of Education and Human Development here at Georgia State University. She is currently Principal Investigator for the Network for Urban and Rural Teachers United for Residency Engagement, also known as Project Nurture, a $7.5 million teacher quality partnership grant. Dr. Benson also served as PI for numerous grants designed to recruit and retain teachers in both rural and urban school districts. She has also worked with the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, the Georgia Department of Education, and Atlanta Public Schools in various leadership roles. Her university experiences have also included Clark Atlanta University, Southern University, and Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am a New Orleanian, and so that connection with Louisiana is kind of special to me. I want to introduce, thank you, Gwen, for being here. Dr. Vivian Laster was educated in the Dougherty County school system and received her bachelor's degree from Albany State University, master's from the University of West Georgia, specialist and doctorate from Argosy University. Dr. Laster's career includes 16 years as a network administrator with the Harambe Child Development Council, the Head Start program, 2 years with the Sumter County School System, and 21 years with Terrell County School System. In Terrell County, she has taught business in the career technical and agriculture for 13 years and is currently serving as the CTAE director and the principal of Terrell County High School. Her experience includes participation on various CTAE committees on the regional and state level, as well as chairing several district level committees. She has played an active role in the advanced ed process for high schools and is serving as the accreditation committee and is serving on the accreditation committee for the district. So welcome, Dr. Laster. Next, I want to welcome Dr. Cathalina Mons. She's a professor of management information systems and founding director of the Center for Educational Opportunity at Albany State University. The center is a $3 million 5-year grant that provides support for K-12 research on educational innovations, opportunities, access, and models germane to students living in fragile communities. She served as the co-director of the Center for Economic Education from 2017 to 2018, to improve economic and entrepreneurship education to underserved communities, where she hosted and led workshops for K-12 teachers and helping them deploy creative skills, design thinking, and problem-solving skills in developing the economic and entrepreneurial way of thinking. She is widely recognized for her contributions to teaching and leadership. She's a native of Detroit, Michigan. Kathaleena holds a PhD in instructional technology from Wayne State University, a master's degree in economics and entrepreneurship for educators from the University of Delaware, a master's degree in computer science from Wayne State University, and a bachelor's degree in computer science from Spelman College. And finally, I want to introduce Erin Raber. She is the Digital Learning and Media Services Coordinator for Thomas County Schools in Thomasville, Georgia. This is her 4th year in this role after previously working as a high school English teacher and a middle school media specialist. She is currently in the dissertation writing phase of the pursuit of her doctorate in educational leadership from Valdosta State University. So welcome, Erin. So this is our amazing panel. And we're going to get right into it because we have about 50 minutes to talk about urban and rural communities and their opportunities as they relate to computer science. And this is a complex issue, both because of the different spaces that we're talking about, urban and rural. But if COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic has taught us nothing else, it has only amplified the disparities that exist in these communities. And so those two things, the intersection of computer science education and the challenges with access to that particular field here in Georgia, and the challenges in urban and rural communities, I think this is going to be a pretty dynamic and complex conversation. So we're going to get to a conversation about your work and the solutions that you're building to address these challenges, but I think that it may be nice for us just to have a conversation about the landscape. What are the challenges currently facing urban and rural communities when it comes to this idea of access to computer science education, and not just access, but computer science education that actually serves the needs of the children in these communities and their families. So each of you is engaged in different ways in this work. And so I'd love to hear from each of you with regards to what are the challenges as you see them in both urban and rural communities. Kathaleena, let's start with you.
Thank you for the invitation or for the awesome introduction. And I'm so delighted to be on the dais with such a group of dynamic scholars. So yes, as we kind of lead into this conversation regarding rural and low socioeconomic students, I think it would behoove us to kind of get some baseline information, some baseline data, if you will. And so in preparation for today's discussion, I just did some quick searches on the fact that, first of all, there's about 1.7 million public school kids in Georgia alone. And as of March 2019, the Georgia Professional Standards Commission noted in their study, in their research, that there are about 260 teachers who are certified to teach computer science. But of course, we all recognize on the call that's almost close to 4,000 teachers who have what we call the computer science endorsement. And again, I'm sure that those of you who are on the dais will help to kind of confirm some of these numbers. And so having said that, in looking at a study by Google that was done in 2015-16, while parents and students in small towns and rural towns are really interested and they understand this value of computer science education, sadly enough, I think that some of the barriers that are coming out in the literature are really, one, the lack of teacher availability, not having enough money to train teachers in computer science, and certainly the challenge that we always see in terms of districts focusing quite a bit of their energy and time on test prep. So I hope that our conversation today really hones in on kind of solutions, because most of us who are on a call really represent some of the smallest, poorest counties in Georgia. And in fact, the University of Georgia's Vincent Institute has done a report on poverty. And most of our counties actually are classified as what we call persistently poor counties. And in some cases, some counties have just but one school that houses K-12 students. And so I will stop there, looking at, kind of what constitutes some of the baseline data, but I certainly would love to engage everyone on the conversation, really to kind of hinge on how do you tackle the question of education coupled with the question of economics and opportunity.
Others, I'd love to hear your ideas about what are some of the challenges that you've encountered with just access and opportunities that applies to computer science education in these two different contexts.
I'll jump in, if it's okay, to follow Dr. Mons, because she mentioned the shortage of teachers in Georgia with the endorsement. And I am excited about the lobbying that computer science advocates did to ensure that RFPs coming out of the U.S. Department of Education now require a computer science competency. That is how I got to this panel today. I can tell you that in previous grants that were written to help with some of the challenges, computer science was not a topic that was discussed when we were talking about writing grants to address teacher shortages in the STEM fields. And so one of the challenges now, as Dr. Mons mentioned, is trying to recruit and retain teachers in this area, get those endorsements out to teachers. We only have a couple of universities, I believe, that offer the endorsements, and some of the RESAs, the Regional Education Service Agencies throughout Georgia. So there's an access issue, and then there's also the issue of where to find young people who want to go into teaching. That's a whole discussion by itself, and especially in computer science, when so many other fields are open to them once they get endorsement and training in this area. So my real challenge for you is to help to sell computer science to young people while they're in high school as an option they have as they go into their careers of choice. Think about computer science. Even if you want to teach only 3 years or 4 years, there are always other options to move into, but it's a great career to start out at.
Yeah.
And Erin, I see you nodding your head as somebody that
I would like
with
to echo a couple of things that Dr. Monds and Dr. Benson have said. I think that in rural districts in particular, I think that mentorship can be a real barrier, because I don't feel like our students necessarily see themselves reflected in the field very much, just because of industry in rural area. Like, their parents don't work in computer science. We're not in a metro area where kids' parents have jobs in this field, and so they just have a limited worldview or scope of what's out there career-wise as related to computer science. Another thing I'd like to mention as well is, in our system in Thomas County, we do have a K-12 computer science initiative, and we have worked really hard to make sure that funds are directed towards our program and professional development, and that we apply for grants. But all of that stemmed from leadership from the superintendent. And so I think that a huge barrier or gatekeeping to furthering computer science is making sure that the people who are closest to your staffing and spending decisions are aware of the importance of computer science. So I just think that district leadership and vision and making computer science a priority from the people at the top. The school board needs to understand the value of computer science. Otherwise, if there's no vision, there's no direction, and anything that started will flounder.
So, hello everybody. I just want to kind of touch bases on something that everybody said. It kind of hit where I am. I am in a rural area, poverty area, so that means there are plenty challenges and barriers. One of the things that we we've done in our county, and I have to give kudos to my superintendent, Douglas Bell, was very instrumental in us being sure that we would include computer science. So in writing my technology plan, I started with elementary, middle school, and high school. It has to be a progression. If not, there would be a big hole where we would not be able to fill. So in writing the grant for computer science, I wrote a $25,000 grant. I was funded for it. So in that grant, I made sure that I could get at least 4 of my teachers to get the endorsement. Elementary, 1 middle, and 2 high school. So from that perspective, there are some challenges, some things that we've run into that will present a problem. But when I look at the technology plan, it'll take care of those specific challenges. But one of the barriers we have in the rural area is the availability of resources and the availability of internet access. So with internet access being a challenge, it presents the challenge to my students, because in rural areas, there's some areas they can't even get internet access in. So they have to rely on the school. And so with introducing computer science, we've already started at the elementary school, and by being a CPAE director, it's always been on the forefront. We've always had to talk about computer science. They've always had a push for computer science. The issue was, again, availability of teachers, availability of people wanting to come to rural Georgia to teach my students. And so once you get to that issue, you really have to get with the Dr. Benson, the Dr. Monds, anybody else you can, Brian Cox, who can assist you to alleviate that by presenting you some avenues that you can use your teachers. So since that was a long-range plan, I just decided to add that in the grant and go ahead and apply for those teachers to get computer endorsement.
Thank you. I think the other thing that I'd add to this conversation is, and Dr. Laster, you kind of nailed it just a bit there, is we have to acknowledge that both of these contexts, both urban and rural context, are heavily influenced by the history of systemic racism and classism in our country. I mean, these are communities that are faced with poverty. They're largely, oftentimes, communities of color. And I think that none of us, if we were sitting back 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and we could look into the future and say, which communities do you think are going to be last to get access to computer science? Which ones do you think are going to be last to have computer science educators in their buildings, in their schools? We probably would have predicted these 2 areas. Most of us would have predicted these 2 areas. And it's sad, but I mean, that's the truth of the matter. And so I think also understanding that part of the challenges here is the history of these 2 types of oppression in our country. And that's something I think we also have to think about when we begin talking about solutions, is that we're not just talking about building out a curriculum, and we're not just talking about recruiting teachers and preparing them to teach. We're talking about doing it in this context specifically. And I think that's something that we really need to consider. So that being said, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the challenges, because I think we all know that they exist. We all know that they're there. We're all too familiar with them. When we think about where we want to be and our vision for this work, our vision for creating schools where our children have access and can engage in quality computer science, and not just for a job, but for citizenship to help their communities, what does that look like? And I think we can probably move into a conversation of some of the work that you all are already doing. But I'm very interested in your vision. Oftentimes we struggle to do something because we can't really see it. But I'm interested in your vision.
One thing that I think is necessary is to sort of, Brian, can you mute? There, I muted you. I have the power to do that. One thing I think is necessary is to demystify computer science a little bit. I think people hear computer science and they don't necessarily understand what it is, and they think that it's only programming. So I think a great place to start in a district is to look at those K-8 computer science standards and realize that there's a lot in there that people are doing already. It's not just, I think it's been my experience that people hear computer science and they think it's only programming. And I think there's a lot more to computer science than that. Also, along the same lines, I think we have teachers in our schools already who can teach computer science, especially at the elementary level or at the middle school level, who do not have a computer science degree or haven't started the endorsement program yet. I think people think they have to be the expert before they can start teaching something. And there are so many wonderful free resources. I mean, I cannot speak highly enough of code.org and the stuff they've created. And that stuff is so turnkey and kids just get it. So the teacher does not have to be the expert. I think that's one way we need to reframe our thinking on CS and just kind of jump in with both feet and realize there are resources out there. There's professional learning available. You do not have to start from scratch. You can use Scratch, though. That's a great program also. But you just kind of have to reframe your thinking of what computer science even is. And I think it's helpful to start with leaders in your school district or in your schools and just saying, what is computer science? What are we even talking about? And coming up with definitions of what it is and why it's important. And as I mentioned earlier, I do think it is key to have the key decision makers and gatekeepers involved in those conversations.
I'd like to add to the conversation regarding solution. And Erin, I think you brought it up. As you think about demystifying computer science, I think it's important that we talk about kind of this intersectionality between computer science and other disciplines, right? The intersection of comp sci in other spaces. Because to your point, Erin, I think students think comp sci is just coding, but the reality is computer science is everywhere, right? So I was in a panel earlier when I was listening to the work of Dr. Tamara Pearson, who's at Spelman College now, and she really brought that issue up, and I think it's worth repeating in today's conversation. But the other thing that you, Dr. Williams, actually brought up that I think is value added, of course, to the conversation as well is it's important that rural towns, particularly those that are struggling in terms of socioeconomic status, look at the value of creating relationships with business and industry. And not only, so there's really a question of like geography of opportunity, right? So there's research that's been done on the importance of connecting districts with companies. I remember vividly when I was just a high school girl interested in computer science, all I knew was how to type, right? So, but needless to say, typing 100 words a minute was a great segue into a discipline that has served me well. And so Dr. Bridwell Mitchell, who's a professor at Harvard, has done a study entitled, I think, Them That Got, how school partnerships. She actually talks about how they perpetuate inequities. In other words, in her study, what she says is that school districts that have really strong partnerships with business and industry, they're going to excel. They're going to do well. They're going to build. They're going to have resources. They're going to work with business and industry. Their students will do internships. They'll do co-ops. They'll do apprenticeships and the like. But sadly enough, districts in rural towns who don't see the value in social capital, in human capital, and building out their social network will be kind of left behind, sadly enough. So in terms of solutions, I think we need to start thinking about ways in which we can partner with rural companies, agricultural-based companies, TSIS, tech companies that are looking for the talent so that they can create this kind of human capital pipeline. because of course, as you all know, otherwise we're going to be met with this kind of this brain drain, right? So we can educate the best computer scientists ever, but if they leave the rural towns for the big jobs in Atlanta, then again, we're back to square one.
I totally agree, if I might add, with Dr. Mons' assessment. And I just like to say, I think it's really important to demystify computer science. And a lot of people really don't understand. People sitting around our table when we were writing the grant had to get an understanding of what it means, that it's not just turning on your computer and turning it off. And I think that demystifying comes with marketing. And one of the things we've tried to do with Project Nurture, the Network for Urban and Rural Teachers United and residency engagement, is to incentivize an opportunity for career changers, for people who've always dreamed of being teachers, may have gone to a 2-year institution, but now they're stuck. They don't have the resources. They don't know what to do next. They don't have a mentor. So we're trying to find solutions to closing those gaps between finding resources and getting back on tap to becoming a teacher. And so what we found in rural areas is there are not a lot of people just walking around post-bac, who have a master's degree or who have a bachelor's degree rather already and want to become teachers. And so by incentivizing it, through the Project Nurture, for example, we provide a $25,000 living wage stipend for those folks so they can spend an entire year internship in the classroom with a teacher. So they're basically learning on the job. So when they're hired after that internship, you're really hiring a second-year teacher. And that helps with the retention as well. So I just believe there are some solutions out there that if our administrators and legislators at the state level have the will to address the issues that we've talked about and the challenges, it can be done. And when you think about a small incentivized stipend for people to get the endorsements and certifications they need to be able to serve our student population, it's really a small investment when you consider what's happening when they're not getting that training. And you consider what's happening when teachers aren't adequately trained and they're in the field. I saw somebody write in the chat, their daughter is in her first year of teaching and she's trying to decide whether she wants to stay in teaching or not. And so I think mentorship plays a really big piece of that, and connecting with other first-year teachers through professional learning communities. And my vision is that you'll not only have that for just your STEM teachers and your early childhood teachers, but you'll also have that for your computer science teachers. And that's, I think, going to be one of the solutions to keeping them in the classrooms, is through various incentivized models such as this that will require some investment of resources that are fair and equitable.
That's a great point. And I also think that in a lot of rural districts, if you've got a high school computer science teacher, high school teachers in general tend to put themselves on islands. But when you're the only teacher of your subject area in your school, you're even more isolated. And so I think that's where district leadership is important for building a network of computer science teachers across your district, so that if the best teacher in your high school, they're at least friends with and have the opportunity to meet with your middle school computer science teacher and your people that do it in your elementary. So vertical alignment and building a network within your district across your schools is really incumbent on the district leadership so that those teachers feel like they're a part of something.
Let me just kind of add something to the teacher. As an educator and feeling something prior to teaching, don't paint teachers as a glorious occupation. Really give them the honor that they deserve. So when we talk about bringing people in to teach, then we need to, when I say we, society needs to look at how we view our teachers. And so with that being said, how do we bring individuals into a profession that is losing teachers? I mean, just losing them. It's hard as a principal. It's really hard to bring somebody to rural Georgia. But then when we look at how we paint the picture, and so what I tell people who want to come to Terrell County or who I interview, that we're the best kept secret. And so being the best kept secret, then I use some of our accomplishments to draw them to. So one of the things that I'm going to use to draw them to our area is to talk about my computer science and how we're building from our elementary principal, excellent, who started the robotics, STEM, and now she's having computer science as an actual course, then come up to my middle school. Middle schools are doing coding right now, and they're moving to the second course of that next year. And then my high schoolers will be on something totally different. So how do I sustain them? How do I keep them? Yes, I'm going to give them a stipend, Dr. Benson. That's already, and I knew that, I had to do something to keep them. And so with all of that being said, we have to move the perception, bringing administrators, and as Erin said, those people who are in charge, we need not to be afraid to sit on panels where we are discussing what we think, what is needed, because if you're not in the trenches, and a good example is that if you've never walked through my shoes, you don't know what steps I've taken, and you really don't know what I go through, so you can't make a decision on something that you have no knowledge of. And so when it comes to curriculum decisions, computer science, I am a career tech person, so I understand being a stepchild. And so career tech has finally boomed to a place where you recognize the value of a career tech or technical degrees or technical skills. It's the same way with computer science. You gotta make people understand what it's about. Why is it important? And as we move to where we're moving to, and the pandemic showed us that, first of all, you're going to have some kind of skill, because most of us had to do virtual. So just imagine you not knowing anything, no skills, and you trying to do virtual. That's a mess within itself. So we just need to educate people about what we do, what computer science is, and the benefits of it. And I think once we discuss that with our administrators, and not be afraid, be afraid to say that this is needed, this is what needs to be done. Because if we show fear, then we don't have anything to stand up. We can't get in the sport. And so when you talk about bringing in partnerships, it's something that we work on all the time in rural South Georgia. We don't have the industry, so we have to reach out beyond our lines to try to draw partnerships into our community. Use our Chamber of Commerce, our banks, our parents, other stakeholders who need to buy into what we're doing, because our work is important. And if we don't get the buy-in, then as you all have said, we're not going to be successful. It's such a vital part of that success story that we need.
I'll echo that by also saying, if any of you who are listening get the opportunity to be involved in the script training that Brian and his team do, that is a great way to actually sit down with a team of people from your district and decide, how are we going to reach all the stakeholders, not only the people within your district, but also the people in your community. So if you're ever given that opportunity, it is a great way to make your district plan and to talk about all of those things that Dr. Laster just mentioned.
Another thing, Dr. Williams, I think you're, okay. So one of the things I was thinking as Dr. Laster was speaking, and I know, Erin, you mentioned kind of the gatekeepers, if you will, in terms of leadership in districts. I think it's important too, and I'm going to go back to kind of Dr. Williams' opening statements regarding the issue of equity. I think it is so critical that as we look at computer science in rural towns, that even teachers and leaders who are trained to teach comp sci, that we do not utilize computer science as one of those additional avenues to segregate students who are in integrated schools. I was a part of the STEM initiative on the last cohort before the pandemic, and it didn't matter what school I went to. It just seemed that there was a small entourage of students who were engaged in computer science activities, even if, sadly enough, they were oftentimes were not Black and brown kids. And so while we are pushing the envelope for computer science and teacher training and comp sci, it is important that we open and have open dialogue regarding the question regarding as it pertains to equity. So that our Black and brown kids are also in these clubs and cohorts and camps and the like.
And not only that, it's important to not exclude our students with special needs in computer science also. I mean, our computer science teachers will tell you that many times the gifted kids get so frustrated because they want to do it right the first time when they're programming. But they've seen students with autism or other special needs just, I don't know, it's more in their wheelhouse, if so to say. I don't know the best way to say it, but if you limit those programs to just your gifted kids, you are missing out on a huge population of students who really thrive in computer science. I don't know if any of you saw it a couple of years back. CBS Sunday Morning did a special on tech companies that hire young people with autism, and they have a special program that they put them in and train them, and they, the executives that they interviewed said they were some of their best employees. And so I do think you're right. Equity is so important, and we need to offer, as it's called, CS for all, not just CS for gifted.
That's great, Erin. And if I could just add to that, an experience we've had with an academy for future teachers, that we are considering whether we want to maintain that name or not, because it's not sexy to males when they think of, so we were wondering, why are we getting so many girls in our Academy for Future Teachers? And the girls were even saying, the participants, high school rising 11th and 12th graders. And they were saying, because the guys think it's just teaching. They don't understand the computer science piece that we learn, the STEM, that you want us to go into a STEM field if we don't go into teaching, because we need more students of color in that area. We need more males. And so since we've started highlighting the computer science piece, we're getting a lot more interest from males who want to take advantage of the camps. So that's just something we did, an unexpected outcome that we didn't plan in the grant, but it's happened for us.
I think you all are helping to move us, to transition us into this conversation about solutions and kind of the work that you're already doing. I think that I'm a big fan of Bob Moses and the work he's been doing with the Algebra Project, because I think one of the things that Bob has had one of the successful strategies he has employed is he always designs for the children who are often left out. That's how he designs his programs. And so what ends up happening is that their needs are met, and also all the other kids, right? So when we begin to think about those kids who are often marginalized and start with their needs in mind, then we end up designing programs that are very inclusive and address things like equity. And I know that's what some of you all are doing in your work already. And so in so many ways, because of the pandemic, it's caused us to stop, it's caused us to pause, and we're going to be coming back in the fall. And so we have this opportunity here to do things differently, understanding that the way that we were doing them prior to all of this was not really all that great for many of our children, particularly the children in urban and rural communities. So now we have this opportunity to do it differently. Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings just published a piece that said, look, let's stop saying we want to go back to normal, because normal for some of our kids wasn't all that great. So if we're going to come back, and so I'd like for you to talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing that may provide people with some of the solutions that they need to transition into something that's better than normal, right? Maybe we need to go back to something that's better than normal. And so can you talk a little bit about your work and ways that you think we might improve the current situation for our children?
So thank you for bringing up the work of Bob Moses. And I think what you're really alluding to, Dr. Williams, is no longer can we look at education as this kind of top-down model. That bottom-up is going to have to work from moving forward. So having said that, I think that, one of the things that we've done here in our community, we have to embrace kind of out-of-school access points as well. If public school or traditional school is going to focus on the test, then we need to have places where kids can gain access to computer science. And for example, the work that I've done through the Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia, they've even deployed an entire badge series centered around computer science and getting the girls involved in there. 4-H has an initiative. I've worked with 4-H where we've worked on GIS and GPS. No one's talking about, GPS and, tracking and, again, place, right? And so there are really some awesome grassroots work that's being done. I'm sure you've all read learning pods are popping up everywhere. Homeschooling, hybrid homeschooling is popping up. But I do think this is a great opportunity for school districts to say, let's do some inventory. What companies are avail themselves, what for-profit or nonprofit organizations can we partner with, and then ask families and children what ways work for them. Timing, how we work, when we work, it's going to be vastly different than pre-COVID. No longer can we look at school 9 to 5. I love, I was on an earlier session. There was a gentleman chatting about how school can be on, Saturday schools or, working with kids year round. And so I think, again, some of the ways that we're engaging, and particularly in Grady County, here in Dougherty County, it's really kind of having this bottom-up effort to pull all avenues together so that we can afford kids the opportunities to get some exposure.
Well, since the work that I've been doing has basically been through funded projects, we've partnered with, in the past, Albany State. In this current iteration, we're partnering with Fort Valley State University and Middle Georgia State University and Douglas County schools in the metro area. And we're offering these residency programs that are incentivized, and computer science is a component of that training. And so through some of our faculty members whose expertise is in this area at Georgia State, they have developed modules that teachers, both in service and pre-service, will be able to access, and also a computer science endorsement. Someone asked in the chat about where can they get more information about computer science endorsement. So Georgia State University is one place you can do that. And I know the RESAs are also working in that area, many of them, the regional education service agencies around the state. But through that work, not only are we doing the residencies, but I mentioned to you the academies, boot camps, 3 to 4 weeks during the summer. Students receive a stipend for participating. Rising 11th and 12th graders receive $200. We decided that students are either going to be working at McDonald's or wherever they can get a job to help support their families, or they're not going to choose to come to some of our camps. So because we focus on high need, low income communities in both the rural areas and the urban areas, we want to think about the needs of the families, of the high school students especially. And then the Readiness Academy for individuals who want to be eligible for this $25,000 stipend, but they're not quite there yet. Maybe they haven't finished their bachelor's degree yet. So we're trying to provide support for them to get there. And then, of course, the computer science component, which we think is just really important to our work. So we're in the second year with 3 more years of this grant. So imagine what we can do with 3 more years if we can duplicate this work around the state, get more university, school district, partnerships. I believe strongly in those alliances. And then, as some of you mentioned, take advantage of corporate and local businesses and get them involved as well. That's a partnership we didn't think about when we wrote this grant, but it's certainly something we can build upon for the next 3 years. So this is the work we're currently doing. I'm hoping that we'll have an impact in both rural and urban communities, and that we can see that we have some similar issues when we talk about high need and low income communities in both rural and urban areas. So let's align and see if we can make a difference at the state leadership level, is what I'm suggesting.
Dr. Benson, I'm going to ask you a quick question. You can answer it later, I apologize. But, is there any thought given to opportunities to engage the teachers that you're training through your initiative to be a part of what we call action research? So the teachers are writing and publishing as they're experiencing computer science deployment, so that now we have this dossier, if you will, of white papers that we can then serve out to a broader community to say, okay, this is what I experienced. Here is some real rich research findings that can help to alleviate, the repeating of the challenge that a teacher may have. But I think that's an opportunity that maybe there could be some synergy between.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked that question, Dr. Mons, because we do have an anchor action research component to the residency period, where we use a tip model. The teacher, the intern, and the professor at the university form a team together to research different types of interventions. And computer science opportunities can certainly be a part of that. And they have to write that up. We have a summer symposium. All of you are invited. It's going to be held this year at Middle Georgia College and State University. It's free. And it will be an opportunity for our residents to share their research because now the very first cohort will be finishing and graduating in May or the end of the summer. So we certainly think that piece is very important. As a matter of fact, in the expo, we have a set of videos that our residents have done to talk about their experience and how without this opportunity, they would not have been able to be in the position they're in today. Soon to have their own classrooms in fall 2021. So it's exciting to be a part of this work. And Ms. Lassiter, we're trying to bring back the professionalism to teachers that they so deserve, and to make it something that people want to aspire to, and especially in rural communities, because you all still respect teachers. Not that we don't in urban areas, but in rural areas, when I go back to my rural community where I grew up, people still see me as that teacher that I was at one time. And I like that. I can drop the university professor thing sometimes.
We are right at 1:49. I know that our panel was scheduled to 1:50. So I just want to give an opportunity for any final thoughts from any of our panelists.
I just want to say you're new in the science initiative, and so with that newness comes excitement. I'm excited, and I know that futuristically we want to hear us about Terrell County. So platforms like this give us an opportunity to learn more. I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to come on the panel with you all. I've learned a lot. I got notes. I'm taking notes because I'm going to hear from you again. So just listen out for me. I had a call this morning, Dr. Mons, so I'll be checking back with you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say in closing is, while we didn't have a chance to talk about the digital divide, I think it would behoove us to have conversations regarding bandwidth challenges, particularly in rural towns. And sadly enough, when you only have one player in the marketplace that's providing broadband because companies don't think that there's some return on the investment, then unfortunately, those kinds of economic decisions are impacting the education for kids. And we're talking computer science, but God forbid in 20, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, Dr. Williams, we don't have the talent to be able to have a new a group of broadband providers because they don't understand computer science. So.
And I know we're a couple of minutes over, but I do want to quickly say, you know, in this past year, all kids have consumed a lot of technology. Consume, whether it was in learning or they were just at home and mama handed them their phone so they would, because they had all been stuck at home for 3 months and they were getting on their nerves. I mean, I have 3 kids. I know how it works. But I do think in K-12, we've really got to shift the focus from consumption to creation. And so much of creation, I mean, kids deserve the opportunity to be creative. And if we can do it in conjunction with digital tools and computer science, not only are we allowing them a chance to have their creative outlet, but we're also helping prepare them for a potential future career. So I do think in leadership, we've just really got to shift the focus from consumption to creation.
And Erin, I think that if nothing else this year, we've learned what we can do, what we are capable of doing. In a very overnight, we figured out a way to get our kids computers, to put up hotspots, to change to virtual instruction. We can do these things when we decide we want to. Oftentimes it's about will. And so I want to thank each of you for sharing your genius with us today, and for our audience for being here with us today. An amazing panel. Lots of amazing work being done by the 4 of you. We appreciate your efforts and for you sharing your time and your genius with us today. Thank you again. Thank you so much.